You are about to witness a global movement. The medical system has failed us. Pharmaceuticals are designed to make us sick, weak, dependent. Not anymore. This is the Medicine Girl podcast with renowned healing expert and registered nurse Robin Stebbins. Every week, we shine the light on new ways to heal your body from the root, ignite your inner healer, and tap into your divine wisdom. Begin to live harmoniously with your mind, body, and spirit. You are stronger than you think, braver than you realize. Now is the time to wake up and start living healthier, wealthier, and laugh out loud happier. And here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast. It's me, Robin Stebbins, and today I'm excited to have Julie Kratz, a Tedx speaker, author of Pivot Point, and you're also the owner of, is it Next Pivot Point?
Yep.
I love it. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of introducing yourself and what you feel is important, and we're going to kind of center our discussion today around why it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. Yes. So my business is Next Pivot Point, and I started that about 6 years ago with the intent to develop women as leaders. I myself was a woman leader in corporate America for a dozen years and just saw a lot of missed opportunities for women to be engaged. And I experienced it in subtle ways and overt ways and just had a lot of kind of strange things that happened to me. And I realized in reflection through all of those experiences that it really was a collective experience. It wasn't just mine. As I compared notes with other women in corporate America, they very much experienced similar types of things of, as simple as not being included in the happy hour with the guys, to as overt as a CEO saying he doesn't promote women in the childbearing years.
Wow.
To just, myself being an expectant mother and kind of being dismissed overall from the workforce as somebody that was kind of there, but I didn't feel there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those things were kind of a culmination of my own experiences to say, we can do better than this. And how can I be a part of the solution? We've done a great job of outlining the problems, but that doesn't seem to be changing things much.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned in these 6 years, traveling, speaking, talking about gender equality, and now pivoting more to overall diversity and inclusion, because it is a holistic human experience that's really being missed out on, especially in the corporate America world, is that we need to engage our allies. We need to include the people that don't feel included in the conversation. And they may feel included in the everyday because the world's kind of built by them for them. But they're not always privy to the conversation, certainly about women or race or disabilities or oftentimes LGBTQ issues. So that's what I spend my time doing, is advocating for allies, bring them into the conversation, help them understand how they can help support us.
I like that. And I really, a couple of things that you said really resonate with me, being a woman and being in the workforce for, it's been 30 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
And 30 years ago, it was just expected that I was sexually harassed on the job. And it wasn't even a question of, should I say something? It was just, this is what you do to keep a job. And if it gets too bad, you're going to have to quit. So there's no conversation. And then I also like, giving a voice to the voiceless, but including the male counterparts in the conversation instead of it just being us against you. It's hurting the bottom line. It's hurting all of our relationships, the dynamics that we could actually collaborate with instead of seeing us as women or you're men. So now we have to judge you as a label.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. And that's troubling that 30 years ago, that was 1990. It wasn't that long ago. And I myself.
Women could vote and we were,
Right. We were liberated or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
My mom, I was raised by a single mother in the 80s and 90s. and came into the workforce in the early 2000s. And my mom's message was, the feminists took care of everything, Julie. You're good.
Right.
Everything's equal now. And so while that message I know was with great intention, and I think she really did believe that, it wasn't really that helpful, right? Because as I entered the workforce in 2000, like, all right, cool, everything's equal.
Yeah.
And you look around, and my first job was at Caterpillar, construction company. So I'm a bit more skewed than most, but not that different than most corporate jobs. It was me and 10 guys. I'm like, what happened?
Right.
I remember looking around. And then, it was interesting too, that I had female managers that oftentimes they were not supportive. I had probably my worst experiences with them, wanting to protect me and say things like, I don't want you to be out on the shop floor by yourself. Here's what happened to me.
Right.
And they would tell you these egregious stories of something that happened in 1975. And I'm thinking, what? Like, that wasn't even something I thought could happen. And now I'm afraid too, because you told me a story that happened 25 years ago. So I think with all that said, though, we know better. We know those things are still happening, right?
They're absolutely still happening. And I think it's just a different way of dealing with it. Now we have the legalities and HR. And even Tony Robbins recently said about the CEO wouldn't hire the attractive woman because of the Me Too movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that just made my blood boil.
Yeah. That's, what's interesting about that is that's an overt, I talk about unconscious bias a lot. That's conscious bias.
It's a conscious bias, and I think Tony's take on it was what made my blood boil. It was like, because you guys are speaking out now we're all afraid of you.
Right. And he's kind of a one for don't be the victim. And I think that's where he was coming from, but he was way off base with that. Yeah. And he later apologized, but I think he did a lot of damage to his reputation with that. I think we live in a culture where attractive women, men just can't possibly think clearly around.
Of course
I've never
not.
understood that, because if I'm around an attractive man, for example, I still focused on
I'm able to work, no problem.
I might appreciate his appearance, but it's not going to derail my ability to get my job done. It's still
professional. Yeah, it's very easy to stay professional and to not. I notice when men are in that position of power, it's very difficult, in my opinion, to all the men that I've worked under. It's been very difficult for them to keep the boundaries clear. Yeah. Yeah. And to keep the line clear of professionalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're right. Keyword there, power. And then that's what harassment is. Oftentimes that's what domestic violence is. A lot of the things that happen to women, much more so than happen to men. And it's worth noting these things do happen to men occasionally as well. But what we know from what's reported, and 70% is not even reported. But we know from what's reported is the overwhelming majority, 2/3, 3/4 of those experiences happen to women, and those that identify as women in the workplace. And it has to do with the power. And so when you have, I often say, when you have the power in the hands of few, right? When absolute power is not a good thing.
It's not.
Inside the walls of corporate America, they're mostly led by white men. I mean, there are more men named James leading Fortune 500 companies than there are women CEOs.
Wow.
And when you hear that, I didn't believe it at first. I was like, oh, who pulled a joke on me? And I looked it up, and it's true. Because we only have a little over 5% of CEOs in Fortune 500 companies that are women. So that's where we're at. And so when the power, again, is so lopsided, it kind of is your rules. You can do what you want. And Me Too really did a nice job of raising that awareness and redrawing boundaries in a healthy way, and fast forwarding us to present.
Well, and almost what it did for me was I realized, I did have a voice. The positions that I was in before, I could not have said anything. It wouldn't have gone anywhere. I just had to either quit or just continue to be harassed. But I think it's shown women that, yes, we do have a voice. And to point out, though, as women being part of the conversation or leveling us up, look at Sarah Blakely, look at these women, you know, that have been, they just had to do it on their own, but they're missing out on so much talent and so much potential to create something, you know, that feminine energy is really creative and powerful. And why are we negating that?
Yeah. And it's not a zero-sum game, right? And I love Sarah's example of, you know, just persevering, and she just kept going through obstacle after obstacle. And for a lot of women, you know, it's not that easy. You don't have resources, you don't have people that support you, don't have your allies, right?
Right.
So the more privilege you have, and she's very open about talking about her privilege, which I love. The fact that she was born here to good parents and had an education. There's so many things that she was given, you know, that other people don't often get. But with that said, we're missing out. We're all missing out when people aren't allowed and permitted to really be their full selves and bring their full gifts to the workplace. And there are so many examples of investments, for example. Those that pitch that are people of color or that are women are far less likely to be funded because white male investors don't understand their ideas. And they'll say things like, I'd have to talk to my wife about that, or I don't think that would work if it's a product for African Americans, just because they don't understand it. But if it was something designed for them, they would. So therefore we get more the same products and services that behoove a certain type of demographic. So yeah, we're not our best when not everybody can be their best.
And I like since we're talking about Sarah Blakely, she has this group of, it's just business. It was like a business club or something like that. And it was her and the rest were men, and they kept giving her advice, you know, male dominated masculine advice. And she was like, no, you know, I'm just going to talk to the universe on that, or I'm going to really tap into my heart and see what my heart's saying. And I can't give you an answer until I can feel it from my heart. And they, you know, of course, eye rolls and the typical male reaction. But now she said all of them have come to her and said, tell me about this universe. How do you speak to this universe? I want to know more about that.
What's that like?
What is that leading from the heart? It seems to be working awfully well.
Well, and unfortunately, you know, something like gender equalities really is best for men and women, because what we teach men is to stuff their emotions, to not feel. And so fast forward to adulthood, when you do need to practice emotional intelligence, when you do need emotion to captivate an audience or to connect ideas, it's a strength that women are given through that socialization. And men aren't allowed to do that in our socialization, which is a disservice to all genders.
Well, and I think that's what your point is. The men are suffering from this dynamic. Also, they're not winning. They're not, you know, living up in your head, putting your head down and being the provider and work. That's not getting you any kind of quality of life. And I know a lot of men that I work with personally are suffering. But you've got to put on the brave face. You don't talk about emotions, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and which is a perfect segue to what I really want to talk about. And what we kind of chatted about a couple weeks ago was, you know, right now, everything is brand new. Everything is different. And I tend to, my go-to is to be a cheerleader, and I'm going to be really positive, and I'm going to show you, you know, 11 ways to boost your immune system. And then sometimes I need somebody to cheerlead me. And when we were talking that day, I was like, I'm just having a rough day. This has not been a good day, and I'm kind of feeling low. And to not run from that or try to chase away the feelings or fight them. It's like, it's okay in this moment to just not be okay and not have the answers and not need to be up there on the block with my horn shouting words, positive words and affirmations.
Yeah. It's okay to not be okay. Right. Like you said. And, you know, people like us that study positive thinking and myself, you know, certified master coach, and those tools were extremely helpful when everything was going the way I wanted it to.
Yes.
Right? Oh, yes, I can do my positive affirmations. Oh, yes, I can do my positive journaling. Oh, yes, I have my vision board that's going to be accomplished early this year. I
Yes.
think about all of these techniques that I've learned and I've built into regular sustainable behaviors and built a life that's focused on thinking positive instead of being wired for the negative. And this whole reset moment that we're upon, it's not going the way I want it to. It keeps
Yeah.
not going the way I want it to. And I think a lot of our listeners can probably identify with that there's just going to be some really crummy days.
Yeah.
And while you can have perspective to think I'm healthy, that people I know are healthy, whatever it is, I really try to affirm what I have instead of what I'm losing. At the end of the day, though, there's some really tough stuff that you just have to marinate in sometimes and like let it be. And you can't just like do a right turn to positivity right away.
And it's almost like if what you're saying, and we are so geared towards thinking positively, shifting your perspective. And those are great tools to have when you've gone past the point of feeling your feelings and now you're underneath them and you're not there's not a positive feedback loop to maybe gaining more understanding or feeling the message in the feelings. But I think you're shortcutting the message when we label, I'm feeling depressed today, bad. I'm feeling anxious today, bad. Shift, shift, shift. And instead of shifting, I'm like, what is the message from this anxiety? Be as big as you want to be, stay here as long as you need to stay. And, in that, it shifts a lot more quickly. Not that I need it to at that point. I've given it over to the universe, or I've allowed it to run its course. Because I think when we fight anything, we just make it bigger and more resistant.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a fine balance there of feeling the words you said, like depressed, anxious, sad, even. I think one of the words that I would describe my emotional state over the last couple months really has been just grief, like grief for what was going to be and just accepting it's not going to be there. And just like any grieving process, you have to experience the emotional roller coaster of losing it, of wanting it back, of chasing it, and then not getting there and falling flat on your face a few times to be like, I guess it's just not going to happen before I can like actually accept this new whatever it is.
Yeah, the acceptance is a very difficult piece, especially I think for a personality like mine. I like to make things happen. My go-to from childhood trauma was just to do and run. And this society especially gives you lots of praise and loves that, we're busy. I'm busy and busy, busy, busy. And look how much I accomplish. And look how great my house looks in my yard. And I'm doing it all myself. But I'm depleting myself. I'm feeling absolutely emotionally bankrupt instead of just being able to relax into it and be okay with not being okay, being in a moment of anxiety or being in a moment of sadness or that grief that you're feeling. It can really feel overwhelming, especially when I'm so used to pushing it away. Feeling it for the first time, kind of like the first time you fell in love. It's like, that was really powerful. And then, afterwards you kind of
break up.
Then it's the breakup. And then you get some years behind you and you can navigate it a little better. But when you're first navigating all this stuff, it's all brand new.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate, I think going back to your childhood roots and how you dealt with emotions is really helpful right now for listeners that are struggling with emotions or not even knowing how to identify the emotions that you're feeling. Sometimes I struggle with that. Like, why do I not feel like myself? Or what is this little feeling? Because I don't feel it very often.
Right.
But when I was a kid, I was raised by that, strong single mom, right? And one of her other mantras was, Oh, you're sad? Well, just do something.
Yes.
Anytime I'm feeling sad, I just get busy. And thought, okay, so that's how I've always dealt with trauma, is just stay busy, because that's what she would do. Well, clean the house. Certainly you have some chores to do. You can do the things on your to-do list.
Absolutely.
And I wasn't really feeling it. And I wasn't really going through that process and unpacking what was really the root of what I was feeling. And it's a lot easier to plow through. I'm a very fast-paced person, so I love to plow through things. There's a conflict, a disagreement. Okay, let's just hash it out. Let's talk through it and come up with an instant solution. And boom,
we could probably be done with this in 25 minutes, the way I've calculated in my mind, if we really power through.
Right. It shouldn't even take that long.
Yeah.
So even for me, when I'm doing my journaling, sure, 5 minutes will be fine. You know, it's these techniques that I do that I don't really spend time just looking at a blank piece of paper, for example, or just sit there and look out the window. And that is something that I've noticed about myself now in the new world. I don't know what to call it, but this reset period we're in. You really can't be that busy. I mean, yes, and you're in healthcare, right? Which you are. There are certain pieces of society that truly are very, very busy. I chose to eliminate that word from my vocabulary a year or so ago, because I just got sick of people telling me that.
Right.
Like,
yes.
It almost sounded like dismissing, like, well, I'm so busy. I'm like, well, I'm busy too. Like,
yeah. well, am I not enough? Yeah, I'm super busy. Also.
Yeah. And so I started subbing in the word active, like I'm very active when people would ask, especially in times when right up until this, I was preparing for my TED Talk. I had my new book launch. I mean, there were things that were very active. It was legit. And so I would tell people I'm very active right now. I'm excited. I'm working on some exciting things. And I didn't say it just to sugarcoat it. I really did feel that way. But I was trying to not play into this American society of just keep go, go, go. That's what success is.
Right.
But I was feeling that way. And now, nope, not so much. I mean, people aren't knocking on my door to do speaking gigs right now. I'll tell you that. So it's offered this reset of, okay, I know all the hacks. I know the positive thinking journal, the affirmations, the vision boarding. I mean, you name it, meditation, yoga. Fill in the blank, all the things that our listeners probably heard about, all the things that you know about, Robin, but those weren't working. None of those things worked for me. And I would even try to like sit there and like, don't think about anything. Just sit there. I'm like, I hate this.
It's kind of like trying to muscle your way to enlightenment. You know, I'm going to strong arm my way and be the hardest worker in the room. It's like, just give me a ditch to dig and I'm going to have that done. Yeah. But then you know, the awareness comes in that the ditch didn't need to be dug. It was just wasted energy. You could have had a nap or laid out in the sun or sat by the water for a couple hours. And I think when I actually do that, when my body's so exhausted, you know, in the past, I would just have to. I depleted myself. And I love that feeling though. Because it was, you know, it's a default. Now I have to relax. My body is exhausted, but the productivity would be so much greater when I would just allow myself a nap. When I say nap meant like I'd lay on my bed for 10 minutes until my brain started clicking into, you know, 100 more things I could start doing. But when I get,
we think that's lazy, right? To even take a nap. I know people are like, what?
Yes.
You must not have anything to do. Ugh.
Right.
You know, you almost get like this look of disgust or like, that must be nice.
Yeah. Or it must be nice to just be able to eat bonbons and nap and have your lackadaisical life. But that's productivity for me. Or when I go out and I hike, or, you know, I have to hike at least an hour a day, because if I don't ground, I start getting the symptoms of my patients. So it's a definite absolute for me, but that's when the ideas come. I'm not forcing them. I'm not thinking about anything, and boom, it'll just pop into my head. And that's what I feel is the flow state when I am allowing everything a voice. So everything is welcome. The that feeling, waking up in the morning, just not feeling like myself. And, this doesn't feel good in my body, but that's allowed too. I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to push it away.
Yeah, letting it express itself, because you might need to feel that to feel whatever comes on the other side of that. Right. So it's a journey. It's not a destination. Letting
That's the
yourself go
tricky
through
part.
those. Yeah, right. Because like, oh, what is this? What does this mean? No, maybe you just need to like think about it, which is admittedly such a challenge for me. And going back to your roots and tapping into the energy sources that you have. Again, something else I teach, and whether I'm talking about confidence with women or allyship and how to engage others and influence others. I always teach the technique side, but so much of it is more of the mindset side. And finding what really gets you going, right? And so what's been interesting for me through this reset period of the things that were working when things were good, that don't work when things are bad.
Right.
Okay, well, maybe we need to go back to our inventory a little bit. And not being busy, I can't use that excuse either. So really it was really pushing me in a dark corner of like, I have to deal with this stuff. And I have to feel it, and it's messy, and I don't feel comfortable. I'm not in control, right? Those messages.
Bingo. I think that's the number one thing when you've become accustomed to running from your feelings and the trauma. It's you don't have that control.
Yeah.
I am not in control over my emotions, and I'm not in control over the timing.
Yeah.
I'm not in control over other people's, let's say I'm ready to do my public speaking, but no one's calling. And that can get so frustrating. And then all of a sudden now you're looking at yourself with awareness. You're able to now see yourself more authentically.
Yeah. 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 It's so true. Well, and I think, the word trauma, I think, is something that it's interesting. What we're all going through, I think, is some level of trauma, right? And everyone's experiencing it and feeling it differently. And everyone probably has had a traumatic event or so in the past that can be a little jarring if you hadn't fully dealt with that one before. And then this is happening, and then it kind of re-jars. And I know for me, my mom, again, I lost my mom when I was 22, sudden kind of freak accident kind of thing. And it was dark. Like my good friends called it like my dark place, I went to the dark place is what they said. And I don't even really fully remember my mid-20s. I mean, it was a really weird, few years where I just tried to self-medicate through all sorts of just unhelpful behavior. And so as somebody that didn't deal with that well, the possibility of losing my business and losing part of my, like a really big part of my identity over something I didn't have control over, just like with my mom. I didn't do anything, just happened. I think it really brought that feeling back up of like, oh, don't go back to that dark place. Like, that was bad, so don't go there. And then it's like, well, where do I go?
and I think sometimes it takes us back through the threads because it'll link back up that post-traumatic stress disorder. It didn't initiate just from right now. It's got the threads way back in the past. And even with epigenetics and ancestral trauma, they've shown that that's in our DNA as well. Yep. So it's, when you're talking about that dark place, that's a dark place for not just you, but your mom, all of your ancestors. So you're dealing with lifetimes of trauma. And that's a big place to be. When you're thinking about, do I deal with this, or can I maybe just stay busy for a few more weeks?
Things are going to change. Things will turn around. I'll get the loan, and I'll do this. And, and so it's funny how much we rely too. You got to be careful to rely too much on external factors you can't control, right? And that's kind of what we're all relying on right now is, when do we return to work? What does this look like? Like, I have customers, how people interact in the future. And we don't have any control over those things either. And it's just kind of guesswork right now. And I found myself making bets on things I couldn't control. And that was making me even more frustrated, especially when I turn on the news, which is, I knew better than that. I knew not to start my day with the news, but I just couldn't help myself. Today was day one. I quit. Actually, this weekend I quit. And then today I did not do it. And I thought, I already feel better. And I just got back to positive journaling this morning. So I feel,
but I would like to say something about the news. And when this whole issue came to light, I posted something that said, this is fear and panic created by the media. Here's 11 ways to boost your immune system right now. And it was like, write 5 things you're grateful for. Nothing serious. Right. You know, stop drinking sugar, stop eating sugar, eat more vegetables, simple stuff. But I was attacked for it. And I was attacked because it went against the global consciousness. Mm-hmm. And I think for the first time in history, we have the entire world aware of one thing at one time, and everyone's talking about it at once. And when you have all of that energy and the fear and the chaos and the unknown, and I think we're all so afraid right now, it's in the atmosphere like a cloud. I could almost see it when I was meditating one time, you know, because I just pictured the people texting back and forth, the people writing emails, the people talking, you know, on Zoom, the people, when I go out hiking, I hear them, they're still talking about this one thing. And that's the disease, in my opinion. That's the issue, is the fear and the panic. And when you unplug from the news, and I'm guilty of it, I didn't go and watch the news, but I was watching the, like the Comedy Central commentators, Trevor Noah talking about it. And that's got me it was still the same thing. It was just repackaged in a slightly different way, but they're all mouthpieces for the same thing. And then I got into the other part, you know, and went down that rabbit hole of the whys and the hows. And it wasn't doing anything for me in this moment, except for creating more fear and panic.
And the news is excellent at doing that. I mean, if you want a negative attitude, watch the news when you get up in the morning and listen to it when you're going to bed at night. Your brain is just wired.
It's wired for it.
Pick up on that primal limbic system. Loves fear.
Loves it.
The news knows how to feed them. I mean, you just look at the headlines. It looks like the world's always been ending. Especially now, they could actually say it.
Yes.
Or make it sound like it was. So watching how you consume media, because it's not that you want to stay out of the loop and unaware of what's happening in the world, but being able to digest information in a way that's going to be healthy and helpful.
Yes. And I find, for me, I just find it's called the skim. It's not the best, but it gives me Monday through Friday, just the headlines. So I'm informed, but I'm not inundated. And unless I can physically form a positive response or do something for the collective good, it's draining my energy and it's creating more fear and chaos and panic.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I've used that method as well. The skim, I think, is really helpful, right?
Yeah.
It's not jarring, it's not overwhelming, but it's real enough. And
it's real enough. Yeah. And it's simple. And I don't feel I really think we've lost our ability to critically think. And I feel like we're just listening to the powers that be. We're putting a lot of people and entities above us. Give me the information because I'm not smart enough to digest it and think for myself. But I think when we really start to, at least for me, I feel a lot better. And I think that's the point of all of this, is like, feel your feelings and feel the grief, but there's ways to give your soul what it's wanting right now. And we, like you're saying with public speaking, you know, maybe it's time to pivot. Maybe this is just part of that global energy that everything is having to shift, and the normal was not working, in my opinion. We're destroying the planet. We're destroying our homes. the indigenous people have been almost wiped out. We don't want to go back to normal. And so if we can all get into that place within ourselves, that even that dark place, you know, going back to that is horrible and uncomfortable. But that is, I think Joseph Campbell said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we know you can't change behavior without pain.
Yeah.
There's nothing about the human brain that wants to change. It's a hardwired machine built for survival and automation. So subconscious thinking, right, is how our brain works. We're on autopilot and we don't even know what we're thinking a lot of the times until we bring awareness to it. And so if you want to change behavior, there's no way to change behavior when everything's good, you know?
No.
I was certainly not on a path to really change anything behavior-wise. It's funny, I always pick a word of the year, and my word of the year this year was being. To just be. No.
I have recently felt that too. I was a human doing nonstop autopilot. And the moments I tapped into being, and there was actually, for the first time in my life, my thoughts stopped. And I just felt peaceful. And again, we're dynamic beings. We're not meant to stay in a state of bliss and heaven, because it wouldn't be heaven anymore. Then we'd get
we'd be complacent.
We'd get gamey and weird, and it wouldn't feel good, because we're here to struggle and we're here to grow and we're here to learn. But it's just as uncomfortable every single time. The bar keeps, getting raised. It's not like now I know what uncomfortable feels like. I got that. No, it's going to be different and worse every time.
Yep. Well, and I train adults and teach adults how to change behavior, which is such a daunting challenge because they don't want to. And sometimes they're just passively resisting, or sometimes they're actively resisting. Yes. They've been doing something some way their whole lives and taught that was okay. And to undo that and experience the discomfort with, maybe I wasn't doing it right all along.
Right.
And maybe I need to shift who I am and a lot of my maybe beliefs and my mindset and my techniques. It's just deeply troubling for a lot of people, and people would rather justify that they're right than to unpack that they're maybe not right. And so again, you have to elicit pain in the process. There's something you're missing out on. There's something you're not going to get. If you don't change, you risk being left behind. FOMO, there's a reason people feel right and do something when they feel FOMO. We don't want, as human beings, and this is another huge need right now that we're not getting fulfilled, is connection and belonging. When you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? In physical safety, some of us are feeling not so safe right now, and maybe financially not so safe because unemployment's so high. So then, if you have if you're fortunate enough to have enough privilege to have those basic needs met, then we're talking about connection and belonging. And if you're in a dark place and you're not feeling connection and belonging, especially if you live I think about people that live by themselves. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful I have my family, even though it is hard some days. But we need connection and belonging. And so finding ways to fill that in now.
And what I've noticed, I even was touching my patient's back. I had gloves on and I was doing wound care. And even through the gloves, she just did this sigh like, oh my God, it feels so good to be touched.
Yeah.
And that I'm missing that too. Like, I can hug my son, but that's it. And everyone's looking at you like, stay 20 feet away.
You know each other.
Right. But that is a basic need, like you were saying. And how do we reformulate this?
As humans, we need to be touched. We are a social species that's tribal, and we're not meant to live alone and be alone. And we do appreciate the touch of somebody else. And that's something that we're being told every which way not to do. And so finding virtual connection, right? And all know, we're all experiencing that world, so we don't even go down that route.
Right.
I think at the end of the day, thinking about how you're connecting and how you can create meaningful connection is really helpful. And who you make time for. I mean, who you're spending time with, who you enjoy talking to right now probably says a lot about your core and your energy drivers too. So pay attention to that.
Yeah, pay attention to it, because I think that is, you're bringing in your tribe more, and your energetic footprint is drawing that in.
Yeah.
And I think, too, just hearing you talk, you can measure your heart about 8 feet outside of your body. That's what, with our rudimentary instruments. I'm sure if you had a better instrument, it would be quite a distance. So we can connect energetically now. And, I can sync my heartbeats to patients that are out of rhythm, because the heart's like to sync up to the rhythm that's the most calm and normal. That's why pets are so healthy for people, because your hearts sync up. So we can still sync our hearts, even if, we have to stay 6 feet away, or we can still support each other. If you're going through the dark place, you can hold space for someone. Like, I'm here if you need me. Call me in the middle of the night if you need to. Like, you're supported. Yeah. I think that can, at least we can do some things to connect. And that deep connection is so paramount to health.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. So 6 feet, right? It was
6 to 8 feet. Yeah.
That's really good to know. And yeah, pet adoption's through the roof right now, because maybe people just intuitively feel that need.
I just need something to hold. Isn't that like what we've kind of come back to, is like, what brings us joy? It's not all these things that we've been buying and going to stores and accumulating. It's like those little moments with your cat, or my son and I were having he's trying to teach me TikTok dances.
Yeah.
And that brings me absolute joy.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at it. And that's even more joyful.
And how often were we doing these things in the busy times?
Exactly.
Yeah, my daughter brings me little drawings and things, and she drew an Earth Day thing that she gave me today. A little late, but she gave it to me, and it was just, okay, let's make time for this. Like, I want to make sure I feel seen and heard, and in this moment that I get this and keep it, and it means something to her. And there's so much that I'm like, okay, I got to call, like, get out of here, It's like her way of connecting with somebody else too. And I've heard countless stories like this where we've kind of gotten to know each other much more deeply as humans, where, especially in the workplace, like, seeing somebody's kids is kind of rare. Talking about our families is kind of rare. And that is weird. I mean, when you really, it begs the question, why weren't we bringing our full selves to the workplace all along? Why is it now safe to talk about the people that matter most to us with the people we spend a lot of our waking hours with?
Yes. And I think and it's pointing out, we were so disconnected from what really matters, and I think we've turned a blind eye to a lot of things, and getting more centered into what really matters to me. And that's not going to be what matters to you. And that's the beauty of it. We're no longer told, here's what should matter: a big house and a happy family and a nice car, or whatever else we've bought into. It's like, well, what lights me up? I like going out into nature for 2 hours without my phone.
Mm-hmm.
That lights me up. I like kiteboarding. That made me feel so much better to be able to get out on the water with my kite the other day. I felt my normal. I felt my joy, my energy, and not attaching to it either. Like, now I got to stay at this level. That's my hungry ghost, and the addictions come in if I try to stay there. I enjoyed that moment. I enjoyed the moment, and I'm here in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I said my word of the year was being, and I redid my vision board and got rid of being. Which I was like, this isn't going to happen this year. Are you kidding yourself? But, everything you're saying really strikes a chord with me of being present in the moment. I'm the kind of person that's either thinking about what happened last week or thinking about what needs to happen next week. And it's just finding these chunks of time to just be and to just focus. Now I've changed my word for this year because it feels a bit more pressing, and maybe this is feeding into everything we're talking about with doing, but I've called it self-pivot. We need to pivot. But for me, that's kind of letting go of the past.
Yeah.
Just letting go of what 2020 was going to be and all the hard work you did to prepare it. It's not about you. Like, you did everything you could, but things have changed. And so we need to
Right.
separate ourselves from that outcome and pivot towards what it could be. And that means it's going to be different. That means I need to be different. And for me, that's paramount to getting through this. And it is a baby step process every day on what that pivot looks like. But I think for a lot of people, like you said, the world we had before, I mean, it's just, let's accept that it's gone. It's
Yes.
no longer February 2020, January 2020. Like, we can't go back in time to that time. And there's a lot of things that, that we need to change, like pollution, right? You said, I mean, it's gone down because humans were destroying the planet and we're inside now. Self-care and self-time and time with our families. There's some really good things that if we focus on the good parts that we want to keep and not just go back to the way
Not
it
just
was
go back to,
before.
yeah. And what you were saying, I had a guest, Tanya Crombie, and we were talking about, she's a PhD where she does work with kids and anxiety and wrote a book about it. But she said right now the kids are so much less anxious. All of her clients that she had that were children are gone. Now she's working with the parents. Because they're not being forced to do 18 million things during the week and flute lessons and basketball camp and whatever else we
it'll be kids
scheduled. Now we're just like, we're home and they're with mom and dad and healthy meals. Hopefully, at least in my house, I get to have
some days.
Occasionally we'll have, our moments, but it's just we're connecting now.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Run.
We always do. My daughter's the biggest facilitator at the dinner table of this. What was everyone's favorite part of the day?
Oh.
And it's been funny as she's done this through this. I mean, there's some days when I was in a dark place, and I still am. I'm not leaving the cave yet, but I would just
there's still treasure in there, Julie.
I just felt so bad that I was like, I don't have one. I said that a lot of nights, like, oh.
Let's talk about that though, because that's, I think when you own your truth, and she's asking a question and we know the logical thing is you're supposed to come up with an answer, but your truth and your answer was beautiful. That's authentic. That's what we're craving. I think we're craving to see each other authentically.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just not going to pretend. I didn't have enough energy to even muster up a response. I was like, I don't really have one. Today was a sad day for me.
That is beautiful.
I'm sad that things aren't working out with work. I'm sad that people don't want me to do things that I really know that they need me to do, but they can't. And I'm just not happy. Yeah. So I said a lot, quite a few nights at the dinner table, just being honest about it. But, in comparing to what you just said, her response oftentimes is like, I'm so glad I get to spend time with my family today.
Wow.
So glad I'm with my family right now. And it's the simple things. And I felt so guilty about not having more playtime and arranged crafts, like scheduled stuff like we would do before. We'd always have some sort of fun activity almost every day to stay busy. She's not once complained about the lack of doing those things.
No, my son hasn't either.
Me, and not for her, right? Or maybe it was just playing into societal's.
It's the collective
parenting. Like,
you hear
gotta keep up. You got to be doing this. If your kid doesn't know how to play 12 instruments, you're behind, and that's just not important. And you only get to be a kid for so long. I'm glad that she gets to be in her own wonder world, and she chooses when she does her schoolwork. At 6, I feel like she does need some guidance and things, but she's structuring her own day. She's learning when she needs to take a shower. I mean, these are kind of life skills that she pretty amazing. On her own.
It is. And I think when we get away from the collective idea of, and everyone, especially, I get into it a little bit when I hear parents talking and their kids are, singing lessons and acting. And then I think about, well, what are we after? What's the outcome? Like, are they going to be, we're creating world famous, superstars, it doesn't happen that way. They're piloting their own ship towards their own North Star. Mm-hmm. And I like to put opportunities in front of my son, but he gets to choose. And he doesn't choose very much, but when he does, he's all in. And it's a beautiful thing for me to see. And it is very difficult to stay away from the collective of I'm not doing enough. Mm-hmm. Maybe I should schedule 3 or 4 more things just to keep my anxiety down. But when I don't, and I really...
And then it gives you anxiety thinking about all the things she has to do.
It's all looped together.
Am I doing enough? It's just this constant loopity loop.
There's like 6 to 7 different layers of anxious conversations going on in my head at once, most of the time.
Yep. And it's interesting. I mean, I think for listeners, the longer this pause stays in place. And, I think it's safe to say for the foreseeable future, social distancing is part of how we're going to behave.
It's not going to change.
Right. That part's not going to change. Where we can go might change and some of your choices might change. But I think what I'm getting from our conversation is like, how can you kind of use this time as some introspection time, right? Like,
how can you go into the cave safely?
Yeah.
And really see yourself with that awareness. And it's okay to go into the cave and stay for as long as you need to stay. I think we're afraid that the idea is that you will just get lost in it and you'll turn into one of those people, the hermit, living up in the woods with a bag of rice and a shotgun.
Or, that you're going to be so depressed and self-loathing that you can't kind of get through days. So I think finding some ways to baby step in and spend some time marinating in it before you jump out of it. So I'm cautiously doing this dance. I was on a peer group call last week where, the growth mindset, everyone knows the growth mindset, the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. Of course, she went the growth mindset, right? And she put the 2 on the slide and it was like all these behaviors. And everyone's like, I'm in the growth mindset curve. I'm there. I'm like, yeah, I'm not. I'm on the other one. I know what that is and I know how to do it, but I can't right now. And I felt kind of like, ooh, I didn't want to be the saboteur to the meeting and like the downer, but I wasn't going to lie about it.
But we need you. We need you because it's so easy to say what's expected. Well, I'm on the growth mindset. It's just working out great, and we're tuned to just say all these things. But when you finally have somebody that's brave enough, and I call it the warrior's path, you're brave enough to come in with your truth, whether it's goes with or goes against, like you're just coming in straight.
Yeah.
I think it resonates so much with people that it gives them permission to like start being themselves and start showing you who they are. Because I think we're so used to just facade on top of that facade. Here's a facade for that group and a facade for that group.
Like, I know.
Everything's great. I'm busy and I'm kicking ass and taking names. Woo. But I'm taking more time to discern who gets to see the authentic me, who's safe for me to be myself. And that's pretty easy. I think, if you really just tap into your heart knows instantly, trustworthy, not trustworthy. And if I feel they are trustworthy, I still take my time.
Yep. Who can you be vulnerable around and it's safe?
Yeah.
Who's in your trust circle? Who's in your tribe? And sometimes I don't always think about that first and I'll jump in to that deep vulnerability. And it's only been a handful of times I've been met with a lack of vulnerability on the other side. And I tell myself like that has to do with them, not with me.
I think
they're not ready.
They're not ready, or it's just, I'm speaking my truth. How it lands is really none of my business. And what I have noticed over the years, when I worked with mental health patients or even friends I had 20 years ago, they have written me letters or emails saying, I hated what you said at the time. I thought you were being really mean. But it struck a chord and it really made me look at myself in a different way. And I really appreciate that. So even 20 years later, it can still, I think truth is truth. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying things to be mean or cut you down, but I think a friend of mine just told me a story where he ran into his mutual friends and they said, "Hey, don't be a stranger. Come, why are you not coming over?" And, he's like, "Oh, I've just been busy." The truth was he was uncomfortable because they were both drinking too much, and it would usually devolve into some kind of drama. I think personally, if I had been asked, I would have said, here's the reason I'm not coming over. And it's going to be uncomfortable for me to say that. And I'm not judging you but I'm telling you, this is the reason you're asking why I'm not coming over. Here's the reason. I think that is love.
Yeah. Well, you're telling somebody something helpful that they can choose to do something with. Like you're giving them insight instead of them wondering, right? It's worse, I think, to wonder.
Yeah. Or just enabling the behavior. Like, no one's ever said anything before. And maybe it is something to look at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're telling somebody because you care, right?
Yes.
It's from a good place.
Yeah.
Yeah, knowing your audience right now too, and knowing what someone else could be going through and empathizing with that first, before sharing painful messages
right.
too. So like there's this handle with care conversation that we're having. But I do appreciate some of my friends telling me like, "You're not like yourself." Like, no, I'm not right now. And I appreciate them feeling like they can be honest with me. And
yes,
they're not asking me to be a different version of me either. And they're letting me whine and complain a little bit more than normal. But I know they'll hold me accountable to that and like make me come out of the cave. So having those sounding boards around you that hold that space and will honor that. Right. And you can give them permission to call you out on your stuff too.
That's a beautiful thing. And so in kind of wrapping up, I always like to ask people who their biggest teachers are.
Well, I think we've talked a lot about my mother. So definitely I talk a lot about allies in the workplace and having people that support you. And she was my greatest ally.
Wow.
Just for so many different reasons, a lot of the life lessons and, part of my challenge now of not, keep doing, Julie, I keep hearing her in my head, but also just a voice of reason and a continual beacon of like, well, what would she do? How would she look at this situation? And just had a really great way of, if I didn't know how to do something, it was like, okay, figure it out. And that's very much still how I approach things. So that strength and that grit and just kind of tenacity to take on life has been so admirable. And then I would say too, I mean, I've had some great allies and mentors as I've started my business over the last 6 years. So, I have a mentor I meet with every month and we go through my business plan. And, I was in my bad place. I was in my bad place 2 weeks ago when we talked and I was like, Lorraine, I don't got it today. I'm not going to fake it with you. And, I could tell she was like, all right, come on, and she's from New York. So she's like, go, go, go. But she let me be that way. And she said, you know what? I was like that yesterday too. It's okay. And so, just having somebody that can like, okay, like I don't have a game plan like usual, like let me off the hook with my agenda.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we could just talk. just
want to whine a little bit. And if you have some ideas, great, but I don't need a solution right now. So it's nice to have those people that you don't always have to be on with. And my husband too. I mean, he's been managing this whole e-learning thing right now with my daughter and, he's a great male ally, sharing, things about challenges of being a business owner right now and not having money coming in and wondering if we'll make it and just having empathy and being able to kind of celebrate with the small wins and also being able to commiserate with. So, do silly things like watch your cat do silly things in the morning.
And that's what it all boils down to it. But, and I think just a few things that you said that really struck me before we go is that we don't have to come up with a solution in that moment. And I am so wired to always think about monetizing something or this is for my growth. This is going to make me a better person. All that work wasn't wasted because I'm using it in everything I'm doing right now. Instead of like just letting all that drop and saying, I don't have to have a solution in this moment. It will come through me. I don't need to worry it to death and figure it out with my small brain. Let my heart and my soul come up with the answer. And just let go.
Yeah. And what a beautiful answer that could be if you just give it some time and some space.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Julie. This has been one of my absolute favorite conversations. It feels so real and genuine, and that's what I'm after.
Yeah, well, it feels very, very connected, right? Even though we're
Yes.
miles away and here on Zoom, I feel the connection. So thanks for the
Yes, me
opportunity.
too.
Good therapy.
It is. Yeah, it's good for my heart.
I know I feel better.
Yeah, good. Good. Well, thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.